June 6, 1944, Commander Samuel Dealey stood in the cramped conning tower of USS Harder, watching 3 Japanese destroyers cut through the moonlit waters off Tawi-Tawi. Tracking his submarine with deadly precision, 37 years old, 5 war patrols, 18 enemy ships destroyed, the Imperial Japanese Navy had dispatched Minazuki, Hayanami, and Tanikaze with orders to eliminate the American submarine that had been terrorizing their supply lines for 3 weeks. Until April 1944, American submarines avoided Japanese destroyers. A destroyer moved at 35 knots. A submerged submarine struggled to reach 9. Between December 1941 and March 1944, Japanese destroyers had sunk 14 American submarines. 0 American submarines had sunk a Japanese destroyer while both vessels actively engaged in combat. Commander Dealey changed that equation on April 13th, when destroyer Ikazuchi charged Harder's position at flank speed. Every officer on the bridge expected Dealey to dive and run. Instead, he ordered flank speed ahead, straight at the destroyer. At 900 yards, Harder fired 4 torpedoes in a spread pattern. 2 torpedoes struck amidships. The destroyer exploded and sank in 5 minutes. Dealey's radio report became famous throughout the Pacific Submarine Force. Expended 4 torpedoes and 1 destroyer. Admiral Sumu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, didn't find it amusing. Between January and May 1944, Japan had lost 23 destroyers. Operation Ago, the plan to destroy the American invasion fleet at the Philippines, required precise coordination. Losing destroyers to submarine attacks disrupted everything. By late May, Toyota had concentrated the mobile fleet at Tawi-Tawi anchorage. 4 battleships, including Yamato, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 28 destroyers, the largest concentration of Japanese naval power since Midway. American codebreakers knew they were coming. Admiral Charles Lockwood sent Harder to patrol the waters around Tawi-Tawi and attack targets of opportunity. For 9 days, Harder operated undetected. Then, on June 6th at 03R, a Japanese patrol plane spotted Harder's periscope wake 15 miles north of Tawi-Tawi. 3 destroyers responded immediately. The first kill, Commander Dealey studied the lead destroyer through his periscope. Minazuki, 1,250 tons, 4 5-inch guns. She was closing fast, zigzagging to avoid torpedo attacks. Behind her, 2 more destroyers spread out in a search pattern, boxing Harder into a kill zone. Dealey swung Harder's bow directly at Minazuki. Range 1,100 yards. Time to collision 96 seconds. Every man in Harder's conning tower knew what down the throat meant. You fire torpedoes straight at an attacking destroyer's bow, then dive beneath her keel. If your torpedoes miss, the destroyer drops depth charges directly on your position. If you dive too late, the destroyer rams you. At 750 yards, Dealey fired 3 torpedoes. Take her down 300 feet. Harder's bow dropped at a 30-degree angle. 40 seconds after firing, 2 explosions shook Harder so violently that light fixtures shattered. Then a third explosion lifted Harder's stern 6 feet before slamming back down. Dealey climbed to periscope depth. Where Minazuki had been, he saw debris and an oil slick. The destroyer had broken in half and was sinking. The other 2 destroyers were racing away, dropping depth charges at random. Admiral Toyota received the news at 09:00. He ordered 6 more destroyers to find the submarine. By noon, Japanese patrol planes were searching every 20 minutes. But Dealey wasn't finished hunting. June 7th, 02:30. Harder surfaced to recharge batteries. The night was pitch black. No moon, heavy cloud cover. Perfect conditions. At 03:12, radar contact. Single ship, range 8,000 yards, closing fast. The contact was moving at 28 knots. Definitely a destroyer. Destroyer Hayanami, 1,700 tons, had been searching for American submarines since 010. Her captain, Commander Hideo Kuboki, had received orders to return to base at 03:00. He was exhausted. Nobody expected an American submarine to attack on the surface at night. Dealey ordered flank speed. Harder's diesel engines pushed the submarine to 21 knots. He was closing the range deliberately. Get inside the destroyer's radar detection range before they spotted you. At 4,000 yards, Hayanami's radar operator picked up a surface contact. At 3,000 yards, Kuboki realized his mistake. American submarine. He ordered flank speed and turned to ram, too late. At 2,300 yards, Dealey fired 4 torpedoes. 2 struck Hayanami's starboard side near the aft magazine. The explosion tore the destroyer's stern completely off. The ship rolled 90 degrees, her propellers still spinning as she went under stern first. Kuboki and 147 sailors died immediately. 2 destroyers in 24 hours. The Imperial Japanese Navy was hunting him with everything they had. Admiral Toyota was furious. 2 destroyers lost in 2 days to the same submarine. He pulled 8 destroyers from convoy escort duty and organized them into hunter-killer groups. Their only mission: find and destroy the American submarine operating near Tawi-Tawi. Every destroyer captain received the same orders: maximum aggression, no retreat. Kill that submarine. The interruption on June 8th, Dealey took Harder south toward Sibutu Passage, the narrow strait between Tawi-Tawi and Borneo. Japanese destroyers patrolled that passage constantly. Dealey wanted to see how many he could sink before they figured out his tactics. At 14 hours, lookouts spotted 2 destroyers steaming in formation: Tanakaze and an unidentified escort. Both were moving at 25 knots, conducting a standard search pattern. Dealey studied their movements for 90 minutes. The destroyers were following a predictable zigzag pattern, changing course every 8 minutes. That gave him maybe 30 seconds to set up a shot after each turn. He positioned Harder directly in their path and waited. At 16:30, Tanakaze turned toward Harder's position. Range 3,000 yards. Dealey let her close. 2,500 yards, 2,000, 1,500. At 1,200 yards, he fired 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals. The first torpedo missed. The second struck Tanakaze near the bridge. The third hit the forward magazine. The explosion was so massive that Harder's crew heard it clearly underwater, even with the hatches sealed. Tanakaze's bow section separated from the main hull. Both pieces sank within 3 minutes. The escort destroyer immediately turned and charged Harder's position, dropping depth charges as she came. Dealey took Harder deep, 400 feet. The depth charges exploded overhead, shaking the submarine violently but causing no serious damage. After 40 minutes, the destroyer gave up and withdrew. 3 destroyers in 3 days. Admiral Toyota was about to make a decision that would change the entire course of the Battle of the Philippine Sea. But first, Dealey had 1 more destroyer to sink. And this time, he was going to do it in broad daylight with 2 Japanese destroyers watching. June 9th, 05 hour. Dealey took Harder to periscope depth 12 miles southwest of Tawi-Tawi. What he saw made every man in the conning tower hold their breath. Dead ahead, 4 Japanese destroyers steaming in line abreast formation, actively searching for submarines. Their sonar was pinging so loud Harder's sound operator could hear it without headphones. Dealey had 8 torpedoes remaining. 4 destroyers meant he'd get maybe 2 shots before they overwhelmed him. He studied their formation through the periscope. The lead destroyer was zigzagging aggressively. The second was maintaining a steady course. That was his target. At 06:12, the second destroyer turned directly toward Harder's position. Range 4,000 yards. Dealey waited. 3,000, 2,500. At 1,800 yards, he fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 struck the destroyer's port side within 5 seconds of each other. The ship exploded so violently that debris flew 300 feet into the air. She rolled over and sank in 90 seconds. The other 3 destroyers immediately converged on Harder's position. Dealey took her deep 500 feet. Depth charges began exploding overhead, 23 in the first 10 minutes. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in. Hull plates groaned under the pressure. A pipe burst in the forward torpedo room, spraying seawater across the deck. Harder's crew worked in silence, repairing damage while depth charges continued to detonate around them. After 2 hours, the destroyers withdrew. 4 enemy warships sunk in 4 days. But Dealey wasn't thinking about his success. He was thinking about his fuel. Harder had burned through 60% of her diesel reserves. She had maybe 3 more days before she'd have to withdraw to Fremantle. Admiral Jizaburo Ozawa, commander of the Japanese mobile fleet at Tawi-Tawi, received reports of the attacks at 14 hours on June 9th. 4 destroyers lost, 1 submarine. Ozawa did the math. If an American submarine could penetrate his defensive screen this easily, the entire anchorage was vulnerable. He sent an urgent message to Admiral Toyota. The mobile fleet needed to depart Tawi-Tawi immediately. The Americans knew where they were. Toyota agreed. Operation Ago required the mobile fleet to intercept the American invasion force near the Marianas. But the operation wasn't scheduled to begin until June 15th. Moving 6 days early meant his carriers would arrive without proper reconnaissance. His destroyers would be scattered across multiple patrol zones. His supply lines wouldn't be established. But staying at Tawi-Tawi with an American submarine hunting his destroyers was suicide. On June 10th at 08U, the Japanese mobile fleet departed Tawi-Tawi. 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 24 destroyers heading northeast toward the Philippine Sea. American codebreakers intercepted the movement orders within hours. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the 5th Fleet, adjusted his battle plans accordingly. The early departure gave American carriers an extra day to position themselves for what would become the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The final dive Dealey knew none of this. On June 10th at 16:30, he spotted 2 more destroyers patrolling north of Sibutu Passage. Both were moving at high speed, conducting an aggressive search pattern. Dealey had 5 torpedoes remaining, enough for 1 more attack. At 17:15, he fired 3 torpedoes at the lead destroyer. 1 struck near the bow. The destroyer slowed but didn't sink. The second destroyer immediately charged Harder's position. Dealey fired his last 2 torpedoes. Both missed. He had no torpedoes left, no way to defend himself, and a Japanese destroyer bearing down on his position at 32 knots. Dealey ordered, "Emergency deep." Harder's diving planes bit hard, pushing the submarine down at maximum angle. 300 feet. 400. 500. The destroyer passed directly overhead, her propellers churning the water so loudly that Harder's crew could hear the blades through the hull. Then silence. The destroyer was circling back. Dealey knew the pattern. The destroyer would make multiple passes, dropping depth charges on each run until either the submarine surfaced or imploded. Harder had no torpedoes to fight back. His only option was to outlast the attack and hope the destroyer ran out of depth charges first. The first pattern dropped at 17:23. 6 depth charges exploded in a tight pattern around Harder. The submarine rolled 15 degrees to starboard. Light bulbs shattered. Men grabbed handholds. A second pattern dropped 2 minutes later, closer this time. The explosions lifted Harder's stern and slammed it back down. Cork insulation rained from the overhead. A hydraulic line burst in the control room. For 90 minutes, the destroyer hunted Harder. 42 depth charges. Most exploded too shallow or too far away, but 3 came close enough to crack gauge glass and spring minor leaks. Dealey kept Harder at 500 feet, moving at 2 knots, making as little noise as possible. Finally, at 19 hot hours, the destroyer withdrew. She'd exhausted her depth charge supply. Dealey waited another hour before surfacing. The ocean was empty. Harder limped south toward Fremantle at 8 knots, preserving fuel. She arrived on June 26th after a 17-day patrol. The moment Harder tied up at the pier, Admiral Charles Lockwood was waiting. 5 destroyers attacked, 4 confirmed sunk, 1 damaged. In 12 days, the most successful anti-destroyer patrol in submarine warfare history. Lockwood awarded Dealey a Navy Cross on the spot. Then he asked the question every submarine commander dreaded. "Can you do it again?" Dealey's answer was immediate. "Give me torpedoes and I'll sink 10. The unending patrol Harder's crew spent July in Fremantle undergoing repairs and resupply. Dealey trained new crew members on down-the-throat attack tactics. By late July, every submarine commander in the Pacific had studied Harder's patrol reports. The tactic worked. Between June and August 1944, American submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers using variations of Dealey's aggressive approach. On August 5th, Harder departed Fremantle for her 6th war patrol. She was assigned to operate as part of a 3-submarine Wolfpack with USS Harder and USS Hake. On August 21st, the Wolfpack intercepted a 16-ship convoy off Palawan Bay. In a coordinated attack, they sank 4 cargo ships. By August 23rd, Harder had expended all her torpedoes and withdrew. That left Harder and Hake operating together off Dassault Bay on the western coast of Luzon. At 04:53 on August 24th, USS Hake submerged 4 miles off Hermana Island. Through her periscope, she could see Harder on the surface preparing to attack a damaged Japanese destroyer. Then Hake's sonar operator heard something that made his blood run cold. Echo ranging close, getting closer. 2 Japanese escort ships were closing on Harder's position, CD-22 and minesweeper PB-102. Japanese intelligence had tracked the wolf pack's movements. At 0530, Harder crash-dived. The Japanese ships were less than 2,000 yards away. Dealey had seen them at the last possible moment. He took Harder down fast, ordering flank speed and maximum dive angle. The submarine descended at 35 degrees. Her diesel engine still running as she submerged, leaving a massive bubble trail on the surface that pinpointed her exact location. CD-22's sonar operator had a perfect contact. At 0547, CD-22 made her first pass over Harder's position and dropped the full pattern of depth charges set to detonate at 250 feet. The explosions bracketed Harder perfectly. At least 3 detonated within 50 feet of her hull. The submarine's pressure hull cracked near the after torpedo room. Seawater flooded in at tremendous pressure. Harder's stern flooded completely within 90 seconds. Dealey ordered all ballast blown, emergency surface. The compressed air system fought against the flooding, but there was too much water. Harder couldn't reach the surface. At 5:52, CD-22 made a second depth charge run. The explosions ruptured Harder's main pressure hull in multiple locations. The control room flooded. All electrical power failed. At 600 feet, well below her maximum operating depth, Harder's hull began to implode. Bulkheads collapsed under pressure. The submarine was gone in less than 3 minutes from the first depth charge impact. At 06:00, CD-22 and PB-102 reported a successful kill. They recovered no survivors. All 79 men aboard Harder died. Commander Samuel Dealey, radioman Calvin Bull, who'd earned a Bronze Star for the destroyer kills in June. Every officer and sailor who'd helped make Harder the most feared submarine in the Pacific. A new chapter in naval war, the Battle of the Philippine Sea, began on June 19, 1944. American pilots called it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 3 Japanese carriers sank. The Imperial Japanese Navy lost 75% of its carrier air groups and would never recover. The battle might have gone differently if Admiral Ozawa had arrived on schedule. Instead, Harder forced him to leave 6 days early. Ozawa wasn't ready because Dealey had sunk 4 destroyers in 4 days and convinced the Japanese that Tawi-Tawi was too dangerous. Admiral Lockwood wrote in his post-war memoir that Harder's 5th Patrol was the most strategically important submarine operation of the Pacific War. 4 destroyers sunk meant 4 fewer escorts protecting Japanese carriers, but forcing the mobile fleet to depart early meant the entire Japanese battle plan collapsed before the first shot was fired. Dealey proved that submarines could hunt warships successfully. His down-the-throat tactic worked because it violated every assumption Japanese destroyer captains made about submarine behavior. When Harder charged, Japanese captains hesitated. That hesitation cost them 12 seconds. 12 seconds was enough time for torpedoes to close the range and strike. By war's end, American submarines using Dealey's tactics had sunk 214 Japanese warships. American submarines sank 38 of Japan's destroyers. Harder accounted for 4 of them in 4 days. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman presented Commander Samuel Dealey's Medal of Honor to his widow, Edwina Dealey. The citation read in part, "This remarkable record of 5 vital Japanese destroyers sunk in 5 short-range torpedo attacks attests the valiant fighting spirit of Commander Dealey and his indomitable command." Today, Harder's story lives on in unexpected ways. At the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, submarine tactics instructors still teach the down-the-throat attack as a case study in aggressive warfare. Not because modern submarines use the same tactic, but because Dealey's approach demonstrates a fundamental principle. When your enemy expects you to run, charging often works better than hiding. The 79 on May 22, 2024, 80 years after she sank, an underwater exploration team discovered Harder's wreck in the South China Sea. She sits upright on the seafloor at a depth of 3,750 feet. The wreck is a protected war grave, but finding Harder meant bringing closure to families who'd waited 80 years for answers. And it meant honoring 79 men who changed naval warfare forever. Commander Dealey's grave is at Arlington National Cemetery. His headstone lists his rank, his dates of service, and one line, Medal of Honor, Destroyer Killer. The 79 men aboard Harder came from 38 states. They volunteered for submarine duty knowing the casualty rates. 22% of submariners who served in World War II died. They knew the odds. They served anyway. These men left behind patrol reports and Medal of Honor citations, but those documents can't convey what it felt like to charge a destroyer at flank speed, or hear depth charges exploding overhead, or watch your captain make decisions that meant life or death for everyone aboard. The official history tells us Harder sank 4 destroyers in 4 days. It doesn't tell us about the fear or the exhaustion, or the absolute certainty that this patrol might be your last. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about submarine commanders who changed naval warfare with aggressive tactics. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Commander Samuel Dealey and the 79 men of USS Harder don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.